Hi, and welcome to a workshop on managing your reading load. The amount of reading in college can be very overwhelming. In this workshop, we will go over techniques for managing your reading load. There is a packet that accompanies this workshop. Please print it out or have it open as we go along. The most important thing to have in place when approaching your reading is a schedule. In order to get all of your reading done, you will need to make sure you are allowing time to do it. If you're having a hard time finding space in your schedule to complete your reading, I recommend you check out our workshop on time management. Create a schedule and be intentional about when you're making time to read and study. In order to gauge where you are with your reading strategies, let's walk through the following questions. Do you try and tackle a lengthy reading assignment, something more than 30 pages, usually in one sitting? Do you highlight or underline as you're reading? Is note-taking part of your approach to reading? Do you read your assignments in accordance with the professor's syllabus and adhere to the deadlines? What's the most difficult aspect of reading for you? What do you think your strengths are when it comes to reading? I encourage you to take your time and kind of go through this self-assessment. That'll help you better understand where you need to work and where you can improve in your reading skills and strategies. Take a moment to reflect on these questions now. These are also part of the packet that went along with the workshop, so if you've printed that out, you can take a moment to do that. With those answers in mind, we're going to walk through each of the issues and addressed in those questions and talk about practical strategies for being an efficient and effective reader. The first part is the planning phase. There are a few things to consider before you dive into the reading. We're going to discuss some of those issues now. A common challenge is that students feel overwhelmed by the amount of reading they have. This can be compounded if the reading is challenging or covers a topic that you really aren't interested in. It's best to complete the most challenging reading first. Schedule it for a time early in the day when you're the most alert. This will help you focus on the task at hand. If you have 500 pages of reading in a week, break it up into smaller chunks. Try reading 25 pages 4 times throughout the day, or setting a specific time frame where you can just focus on that reading. Often identifying purpose and figuring out why we're reading the text and what we can gain from the information is helpful framing before we sit down to read. It's important to identify what type of text you're reading and what you're doing and how that might impact your abilities. Is it a novel? Is it a textbook? How will that change your approach to the material or to the time you allot to doing the reading? Environmental factors can really impact us too when we're doing our reading. Where we are and what is going on around us can have a huge impact on our ability to focus and retain information. You want to make sure that you're in an upright, seated position. Many students have tried and failed at reading in bed or on the couch. Minimize your distractions and noise. Seek out other locations on campus that are conducive to studying. Often, getting out of your room can make all the difference in the world. Try buying some earplugs or some noise-blocking headphones. This will help reduce the noisy distractions around you. Many students have found success in downloading white noise apps on their phones or having a white noise machine, and that can provide a barrier from other noises. Cell phones and computers are two things that can distract us from our tasks. Leave them at home or put your phone on airplane mode. Phones can be useful to keep track of time during breaks. Prepare for your reading by bringing your pen and notebook. We're going to cover strategies for active reading, and you'll need a pen and paper to make that work. Next, we're going to talk about SQ3R. SQ3R stands for Survey, Question, Read, Recite, Review. It's a total system, and you can't leave out any of the parts. This system can work with any type of textbook, but will also address some of your needs with other types of books. It takes time to get accustomed to this system, so you're going to need to practice. The first part is surveying, or getting the big picture. You'll want to look over the chapter and determine the difficulty of the material. Is it going to take you a long time? Do you need to allocate a bigger chunk of time in your schedule, note the headings and subheadings of the chapter. Look at the pictures and graphs and diagrams. Read the summary questions at the end of the chapter. That might help prompt you when you're going along and doing your reading. The next part is question. This is the key to active reading. As you read the titles and subtitles, turn them into questions. The questions can help generate new ideas and jog the memory of previously learned material. If you have a book that's not a textbook, one great thing to do is go online and see if there's a study guide or a series of questions that associate with the chapters that you're reading, and then you can read those questions first, and then you can be more detailed while you're actually doing your reading and look for answers to those questions or help generate new questions that you have. Next comes read, recite, review. Read. Concentrate on each small unit under a heading. Focusing on a small unit can help you to think about what you're reading in that space and time and not to look at the other things that are going on the page or to try and be skipping ahead. Try and keep your questions in mind. Try to find answers to those questions as you read. This is a key to active reading when you're engaging with yourself and keeping those questions in mind as you go along. Taking notes as you read. Writing helps to reinforce ideas and to remember them later on. What many students like to do is read a small section and then write down the main point of that section. That can help reinforce that idea, and it can be great stuff to have on hand when you're going to study for an exam later on. Recite. After you survey and read the first unit of the chapter, ask yourself the questions to see if you understand the material. Are you able to explain the material to another person? If you find that you don't understand the material, review it again before going on to the next part of the reading. This skill, recite, is critical to mastering the material. The final piece is review. Check your knowledge. Self-testing is important. This picture is a great graphic for helping us remember, read, recite, and review. It reminds us to read each part of the text and answer our questions, and to stop after each part and to think about the important details and supporting details. It reminds us that reciting is important. It tells us to get thinking and, without looking at the book, say or write important details from the text. Did we include all of the important information? If not, we need to reread and recite the information. It might help us to read some of that information out loud, especially if we didn't get it the first time when we read it silently. It encourages us to review, to look over our notes and ask us what was the text mostly about. It asks us to organize our notes with labels and use pictures and words to help cue our brains. And sharing our notes with a friend and talking about them and talking through the information. That can be really helpful. Now we're going to go over some advice on active reading. One thing we already covered is taking notes while reading. Many students like to read a paragraph once and then go back and see if they can circle or underline or highlight the main point, or write it down in a notebook. Reading out loud can also be a helpful trick, especially if it's content you don't understand or if it's a critical point. Sometimes hearing it and seeing it can be valuable. One thing that I always recommend to students is that you analyze your highlighting and underlining techniques. Too much highlighting indicates that the student is trying to memorize too much. Insufficient highlighting indicates that the student is not able to identify the hidden meanings. So what you need to do is make sure that your highlighting is regular and consistent, that it reinforces active reading, and that it can serve as a guide for review in the future. So when you close your book and you go back to it, not everything on the pages should be highlighted. Only the main points or main words or new vocabulary words should be highlighted. One way to ensure that is by doing what we said earlier, which is breaking up into smaller chunks, reading one chunk and then going back and saying what was the main point of that section. Your highlighting must be accurate. Don't highlight as you read. Read the passage and go back and highlight the essential points. It must clearly reflect the content of the passage. Previewing and reading material helps in this area. It can also be very helpful to develop a set of meaningful markings. Below are some markings that we've used before that have been helpful to us. A check mark meaning that you know the material, a question mark meaning that you need to learn more, a star being an important detail, 1, 2, 3 highlighting the details and reasons that support a main point, putting the word test next to something that the professor emphasized, vocab next to a word that you need to learn. Other students find it very helpful to have a vocabulary section in the back of their notebook so that every time they come across a new word, they can jot it down in the back of the notebook with the word and then the definition and use that as a way to test themselves later on. Hopefully this workshop has given you some tools that you can try out next time you're reading. We also have some other campus resources too. The Academic Resource Center offers tutoring for students receiving a C or less in a foreign language. If you want information on that, you can check out the website or you can come to the Academic Resource Center. Many of the departments also offer their own tutoring or tutoring assistance centers. You can get that information on the Academic Resource Center site, or you can contact people in the department to see if there's tutoring available for that department. The university also has a writing center, which is in Lowinger Library next to the Midnight Mug. You can make online appointments with them, or you can stop by and make an appointment. We offer workshops, academic skills workshops, but the library offers workshops too on using the library, and you can check that out too by going to the Lowinger Library website. The biggest point of reference for you should always be your professors or your TAs. If you have a question in class, if there's something that's not clear to you, please ask your professor or your TA for some help. You can get more information about the Academic Resource Center or workshops that we offer by emailing the IRC or calling us, or you can check out our website, which is academicsupport.georgetown.edu. Thanks.